So my name's Pele Cox and I've been a poet for about 25 years. I stopped writing my own poetry the minute I became poet in residence at the Royal Academy 10 years ago, because when I walked in through the doors, I didn't want to write my own poetry about the pictures on the walls, because I thought that would be boring for everyone. So I decided I'd research the artists on show at the time and their relationship to poetry and literature. And I was lucky because the first artist on show at the Royal Academy while I was there was Van Gogh. And when I started to research what his connection was to poetry, I felt like I'd struck gold. I couldn't believe the rich seam of his relationship to language, and that he had loved Keats, Longfellow, Christina Rossetti, and read a Shakespeare play almost one a week. In his little house in Arles, it struck me that he must have had those poems running through his veins while he was painting the sunflowers. So that was my theme. And then, of course, you want to communicate your theme in a way that does justice to this revelation of their literary interior. And I chose performance because I figured that if I could get actors to perform this internal world that he lived in, then he would be exposed to us in a more profound way, behind the frame.
There, beneath a mossy roof, door and window closed, at bedtime.
The way I came to finding a connection between myself as a poet and Van Gogh's relationship to poetry itself was by having a very deep and profound connection to his relationship to poetry before I sent it out into the world. And the way I did that was by making a script that was woven together by me, even though I only used the poems and the letters that he loved and read and wrote. There still was a kind of a fusion between me and him, because I wanted to create a meta-narrative. So it's almost like a kind of time travel when you don't use anything of your own. And the relationship becomes much more profound because there's no mediation. So the script has 3 strands, and it was my first attempt. I've done 8 scripts of different artists and poets since then, but this was the first one. And I was very whimsical in Van Gogh gave me courage and boldness. So when I heard that he'd read Homer, I thought, I might put some Homer in. And inside Homer, I found these extracts which allude to Odysseus walking out of the sea with his hair red in the sunset.
They left him. Then they went to tell the princess. And now Odysseus, dousing in the river, scrubbed the coat of brine from back and shoulders and rinsed the clot of sea spume from his hair.
I like to engage with these very iconic, profound voices that to me are ever present, because I feel we need to contextualize, obviously, where we are now, and that to be an artist, to be a true artist, you have to understand what came before you, just like the great artists understood what came before them. And Van Gogh's relationship to literature, to me, sets the bar in terms of how to approach your creative self. And at the same time, he suffered something that we all have in our lives. Mental illness is a profoundly present issue, then and now. And just because he was then and we're now, it doesn't mean that we mustn't look back to him, because the language that he brings to a very contemporary issue is so much more well thought out and drawn through a creative filter. That way we can understand ourselves better.
By setting against her never these other words, my dear, I love you, and you will love me, may God help us. One must have loved and have fallen out of love and love on. Do you understand why, dear chap?
I wrote this script a while ago and it hasn't left me that there's this expression of Van Gogh's love of poetry in the world in this little script that I wrote and put together. And when I read about this exhibition at the Courtauld on an Instagram post about 5 months ago, I was so magnetised and so, I feel so bonded with this script. I wanted to share something of this oral tradition with what I knew was going to be a beautiful masterpiece of an exhibition. And it is an amazing thing when an institution is bold enough to see that there's something else that can coexist or contribute that's not planned or is just an instinctual connection. And I hope we've done that justice doing this performance for you.